Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Hello friends, this is Professor Neelam Panchal and I welcome you all in this session on evolution of management thought. Friends, management practices have transformed remarkably over the centuries, adapting to societal shifts, technological advancements and evolving workforce dynamics. These evolution reflects our growing understanding of how effectively organizations lead, optimize the human efforts within the organizations. So, understanding the evolution of the management thought provides valuable insight into how managerial practices have adapted over time. So, it underscores the importance of the flexibility, human-centric approaches and a continuous learning in effective management. Let me explain you the objectives of the session. The objectives of the sessions are to make you understand the historical development of the management thought, to explore the key schools of management theories, to identify how past theories influence the modern management practices, to critically analyze the relevance of classical and contemporary approaches, and to try to look into what exactly the management theories try to tell us. So, now let us start understanding each detail. Friends, management is not a static concept. It has evolved through centuries, shaped by industrial revolutions, wars, globalization, technological shifts and human behavior. The evolution of the management thought represents the journey of the ideas that have sought to improve how organizations are directed, decisions are made and people are led. So, from simple task supervision in the ancient civilization to sophisticated technology-driven leadership models today, management theories have adapted to the challenges of their time. This session traces the developments focus on the major schools of thought that laid the foundation for the modern management practices. So, this is divided into different parts. So, the first is pre-scientific era, that is before 1880s, informal practices and proto-management. So, the pre-scientific era of the management thought refers to a historical period before the formal theories, academic institution or codified principles of management exist. Now, this era was marked by intuitive, experience-based and culturally embedded practices of the management. Although no structured theory of the management emerged, the seeds of the many core concepts such as planning, organization, authority and supervision were evident in the functioning of the ancient societies and the early economic activities. Now, management rooted in intuition, experience and authority. So, in these periods, the management thought was essentially pragmatic and empirical, driven by the need to administer kingdoms, mobilize the labor and manage the trade. So, managers were typically rulers, landowners, military commanders or the heads of the guilds who relied on the personal experience, tradition or inherited practices. Authority was centralized and absolute, and decision making was often informal, lacking the systematic frameworks. Now, this phase is the best described as the management by instinct and hierarchy, where the learning was oral and situational rather than structured. Then, proto-managerial thinking in the ancient civilization, that is again the next stage. So, the managerial accomplishment of the early civilizations suggests the presence of the nascent form of the organizational thinking, even if not articulated formally. For example, Egyptians, they demonstrated the project management in pyramid construction, showcasing the labor division, time scheduling and logistics. Romans, they built the expensive road and the legal systems, revealing early ideas of the standardization, administration and supervision. Chinese and Mesopotamian, the governance systems, they show the signs of the record keeping, taxation and a bureaucratic delegation, implying an awareness of the information management and control mechanism. Now, these examples suggest that although the management was not yet theorized, it was practiced in a sophisticated forms, especially in a large state or a temple economies. Then the Kautilya's Arthashastra came into, which is known as proto-scientific management philosophy. So, the Arthashastra, that is in the 4th century BCE, they attributed to the Kautilya, that is Chanakya. It represents one of the most advanced early attempts to systematize the governance and administrative thought. Though primarily focused on the statecraft, its managerial insights were profound, emphasized on the strategic planning, forecasting and a contingency management. Concepts of the division of work, employee incentives and surveillance systems. Importance of the leadership traits, performance evaluation and a decentralization. Kautilya's work can be viewed as a proto-scientific framework for the public management, merging economic, political and organizational considerations. It is a significant early contribution to the intellectual lineage of the management thought, particularly in the Indian context. Now, then there comes the absence of the formal theories and a managerial education. So, this era was devoid of any conscious attempt to abstract or generalize the management practices into universally applicable theories. Friends, there were no management schools, research methods or universally accepted best practices. Tacit knowledge dominated. Managers learned by doing or limiting elders, often with a narrow cultural or professional circles, that is merchant guides or a military units or a monasteries and so on. So, the lack of theoretical development meant that the practices were inconsistent and a concept dependent, leading to the limited scalability and adaptability. Now, impact of the industrial revolution on the managerial consciousness. So, if you look into the industrial revolution happened in the mid 18th to the early 19th century, and it marked a major turning point in the management thought. The growth of the mechanized industries and the factory system introduced new organizational challenges. What are the challenges? The challenges like managing the large and a diverse workforce, controlling the production line and machinery, then coordinating the interdependent tasks across the departments and the other challenges. So, then there emerged a classical management theories, that is the trend between the 1880s to the 1920s, which is known as efficiency and a structure. So, the classical era of the management thought emerged in response to the organizational and managerial challenges of the industrial revolution. As enterprises expanded in scale and complexity, traditional method of the supervision and coordination became inadequate. The classical theorists aimed to develop the universal principles of management to enhance the efficiency, productivity and organizational stability. Now, this era was characterized by a strong emphasis on order, structure, discipline and a rationality in the workplace. The classical approach is often divided into three major schools of thought. So, the first is a scientific management, that is F.W. Taylor, known as Frederick W. Taylor. So, in the 20th century, he pioneered the scientific management. It addressed the inefficiencies observed on the factory floors, where the worker output varied significantly due to the lack of the standardization, training and supervision. So, Taylor advocated the application of the scientific methods to the work processes, and his system was grounded into the four fundamental principles. The first is a scientific task analysis. He said that break down the task into the smaller elements and determine the one best way to perform them through the time and motion studies. Secondly, scientific selection and training. So, the workers should be chosen and trained systematically rather than left to self-learn. Thirdly, standardization and tools. So, introducing the uniform methods and proper tools to ensure the consistency and efficiency. And fourthly, cooperation between the workers and management. So, promote the harmony through shared responsibilities and incentives. Scientific management led to the remarkable productivity gains and laid the groundwork for the modern industrial engineering, operations management and performance activities. However, it was also criticized for treating workers as mechanical parts, ignoring human needs and social aspects of the work. Now, the next is a administrative theory given by Henry Fayol. So, Taylor focused on the efficiency at the shop floor level. Henry Fayol, a French mining executive, it directed his attention toward the administrative and managerial level of the organization. And his work, General and Industrial Management in 1916 was one of the earliest systematic articulation of the management as a comprehensive and transferable discipline. Now, Henry Fayol's framework brought conceptual clarity and universality to the management. It established that management principles could be applied to all the type of organization, not just factories. His work forms the foundation of the modern management education and a practice. The next is given by Max Weber, which is known as bureaucratic theory. So, Max Weber, a German sociologist, was concerned with ensuring the predictability, fairness and efficiency in the large organization. He developed the bureaucratic model to describe an ideal type of organization based on the rational legal authority in contrast to the traditional or the charismatic authority. Weber's theory brought legitimacy and a rationality to the organizational authority and a structure, and his ideas underpin many elements of the public administration, corporate governance and legal systems today. However, bureaucratic structures have often been criticized for inflexibility, excessive formalism and inefficiency, leading to what is commonly termed as a red tape. The next is a neoclassical and behavioral theories, that is from 1930s to 1950s. This human relations and a motivation. So, friends, by 1930s, the limitations of the classical management theories, especially their mechanistic, rigid and impersonal approaches, had become increasingly apparent. As organizations grow more complex and the social dimensions of the work gained prominence, theorists shifted focus toward the human element in the organization. These era often called the neoclassical or the behavioral era. It emphasized on the psychological and the social needs of the workers, their motivations and the dynamics of the group behavior. Now, the next era is reaction to the classical management. It emphasized the human side. So, the neoclassical and the behavioral schools emerge as a response to the overemphasis on the structure, rules and efficiency found in the classical theories. Early research and observations highlighted that employees are not just economic beings driven by pay, but social beings motivated by respect, recognition, belonging and self-fulfillment. Now, these realizations mark a paradigm shift towards understanding the workplace behavior through the lens of the psychology and sociology. Next is the Hawthorne studies, that is discovering the social and psychological dimensions of work. The most influential empirical research of this era was the Hawthorne studies, conducted at the Western Electric's Hawthorne's work in the late 1920s and the early 1930s by Elte Mayo and Fritz Rosberger. Initially designed to study the effect of the physical work conditions on the productivity, these studies unexpectedly revealed the profound psychological and social factors affecting the workers' performance. Hawthorne effect. So, workers' productivity increased when they felt observed and valued, highlighting the importance of the attention, social approval, and morale. So, the studies underscored the role of the formal and the informal social groups, peer pressure, and communication patterns in shaping the employee behavior. They emphasize that motivation and satisfaction are influenced by the interpersonal relationships and emotional needs, not just monetary incentives. Now, the next is behavioral theorist, exploring the motivation and leadership. So, building on the human relation insight, several theories develop the influential model of the human behavior, motivation, and a management style. So, the first here is a Douglas McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. Now, in 1960, the human side of the enterprise book was launched by McGregor, and he presented two contrasting views of the workers. Theory X, that assumes that the employees inherently dislike the work. They avoid the responsibility and must be coerced and controlled. Theory Y, which points that the employees are self-motivated, seek the responsibility, and can be creative contributors if properly supported. Now, McGregor argued that the managerial attitudes and the assumptions shape the organization practices, and adopting theory Y leads to more participative and empowering the management. Second theory is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, Maslow proposed a hierarchical model of the human motivation in 1943, which categorized the needs from the basic to advanced, and it involves the 5 stages. So, the first is a physiological need, which includes the food and a shelter and the basic needs of any person. Now, once the physiological needs is satisfied, we need to have a safety need. So, people are looking for security and stability. Once they are secured and stable, any human being is looking for the third need, that is a social need, which includes the belongingness and a friendship, affiliation. So, people like to be affiliated either with the association, with the organization, with the group, subgroups, religions, and so on. Now, once they are satisfied with the social needs, people have a 4 type of need, that is esteem needs as per Maslow. So, it involves the recognition, achievement, and so on. You want to achieve something over here, and once you get that achievement, then the last stage is a self-actualization, where you are realizing the personal potential. So, according to Maslow, individuals are motivated to fulfill the lower level needs before pursuing the higher level growth needs, providing managers a framework to understand and influence employees' motivation. Next is Frederick Hertzberg's 2-factor theory. So, Hertzberg distinguished between the 2 sets of the work factors in 1959. Hygiene factors, that is conditions like salary, company policies, working conditions that prevent the dissatisfaction but don't motivate. Secondly, motivators, factors like achievement, recognition, and a responsibility that lead to the job satisfaction and a higher performance. So, these theory clarified why improving basic job conditions alone cannot motivate fully to the employees. It emphasized the need to enrich the jobs to foster the intrinsic motivation. Next is a quantitative and a system approaches, and that was from 1940s to 1970s. So, rationality and interconnectedness was the era. The period from the 1940s through the 1970s mark a significant expansion in the management theory, as scholars sought to apply scientific rigor and interdisciplinary world and a thinking to complex organization problems. So, this era is distinguished by the 2 complementary system and the streams, that is the quantitative, that is operational research approach, emphasizing mathematical models and the optimization, and the system theory approach, that is emphasizing the organization as an integrated whole embedded within a broader environment. So, quantitative or the operational research approach, if you look into it, happened during and after World War II. The military and the industries faced highly complex logistical and operational challenges requiring precise data-driven decision making. These gave rise to application of the mathematical, statistical and computational techniques to optimize the management processes. What are the key features? The first is a mathematical modeling. So, the development of the formal models to represent the organization, processes, constraints and the objectives. Optimization techniques were the tools designed to maximize the efficiency, minimize the cost or optimize the resource allocation. Data driven decision making, that is emphasizing on objective quantitative analysis to support the managerial choices. Now, if you look into the major tools and the methods, then it includes number one, linear programming. So, the mathematical technique for optimizing a linear objective function subject to the linear constraints widely used in the production planning and resource allocation. PERT, that is program evaluation and review technique, and CPM, that is critical path method. So, project management tools these are, and they model the task efficiency and timeliness to optimize the scheduling and control. Another method is an inventory model. So, quantitative methods to determine the optimal inventory levels, balancing the cost of ordering, holding, carrying and stockouts. So, here it includes the EOQ also. So, these are several operational research and the related methods. Now, the next is a systems theory approach. So, while the quantitative approach focus upon the internal optimization, the system theory inspired by the biology and the cybernetics introduce a holistic view of the organization as open system, continuously interacting with and adapting to the external environment. What are the core concepts over here? So, the first is open systems. Organizations are not closed entities. It said that they receive the inputs, that is the resources and information. They transform them through the processes and produce the outputs, product or services that influence and are influenced by the external environment. Then interdependence and synergy. So, different subsystems, departments, units within an organization are interrelated and their coordinated functioning produces a whole greater than the sum of the parts. Next is a feedback loop. So, continuous flow of information allow the system to self-regulate and adapt to the changes or disturbances. Equifinality, that is another point over here. So, organization may achieve similar goal through different paths, reflecting flexibility in management strategies. What are the implications for the management? So, encourage cross-functional collaboration and a breakdown of the departmental silos. Fostered adaptive and contingency based thinking, recognizing that the management practices should vary based on the environmental conditions. Emphasize the importance of the external environmental scanning and responsiveness for the organizational survival and effectiveness. Now, the next approach is a contingency and a modern approach, that is 1970s to 1990s, which focus upon the flexibility and a quality. So, during 1970s through the 1990s, management theory underwent another significant transformation, moving away from rigid, universal prescriptions towards the adaptive situational frameworks. These era emphasized flexibility, continuous improvement and a quality as a central to the organization's success in a rapidly changing global environment. The focus shifted toward recognizing the management practices must be tailored to the specific context and that the organization need to foster ongoing learning and a quality culture. The next theory is a contingency theory, embracing situational management. So, contingency theory challenged one of the best way assumption embedded in the earlier management theories by asserting that there is no universally applicable and management style or organization structure. Instead, the effectiveness of the management depends on the fit between the internal organizational factors and external environmental conditions. What are the key aspects? The contextual variables, that is the factors such as organizational size, technology, environmental complexity, strategy and a culture influence what management approach will work the best. Adaptive structures, that is the organization should design flexible structure and management processes that respond dynamically to the changing conditions. Decision making flexibility, that is the managers need to assess the situational variables and tailor their leadership style, control systems and communication accordingly. What is the impact of this? So, it encourages the diagnostic thinking among the managers to analyze the context before action, led to the development of the contingent leadership models and adaptive organizational designs. Promoted the idea that organizational effectiveness is a contingent on alignment between the strategy, structure and environment. Now, the next is TQM, that is Total Quality Management, which build a culture for the continuous improvement. So, Total Quality Management, it also emerged as a comprehensive management philosophy aimed at embedding the quality in every facet of the organizational operations. It grew from the post-World War II quality practices pioneered in Japan and spread globally by the 1980s. What are the core principles over here? The first is a continuous improvement, that is Kaizen. So, commitment to the ongoing incremental improvements in the processes and the products. Employee involvement, whereby empowering the workers at all the levels to contribute the quality enhancement. Thirdly, customer focus, where meeting or exceeding the customer expectation as the primary driver of quality. Benchmarking, where learning and adopting the best practices by comparing with the leading organizations. Long-term commitment, that is quality is viewed as a strategic long-term pursuit rather than one-time project. What is the impact of this? So, it led to improve the quality, the product reliability, the customer satisfaction and operational efficiency. It also fostered the cross-functional teamwork and process orientation in the organization. Became the foundation for the later quality frameworks like ISO standards and Six Sigma. Now, the next is learning organizations adapting through the knowledge and shared vision. So, in the influential book, The Fifth Discipline in 1990, Peter Senge described the concept of the learning organization. That is, organization that continuously transform themselves by fostering a culture of the knowledge sharing, innovation and adaptability. There are 5 disciplines over here. One is the systematic thinking, that is viewing the organization as an interconnected whole, understanding the complex cause-effect relationships. Secondly, personal mastery, that is encouraging the individuals to continually develop their skills and the competences. Thirdly, mental models, that is challenging the assumptions and embracing the open-mindedness. Fourthly, shared vision, where creating collective purpose to align the efforts and motivate the members. And then the team learning, where promoting the collaboration and collective problem solving. What are the implications over here? So, the organizations become dynamic entities capable of evolving with the organizational shifts. I encourage leaders to act as facilitator of the learning rather than controllers and help the organization leverage knowledge as a strategic asset. If you look into the integration and legacy, then together these modern approaches represent a move toward the flexibility, empowerment and a systematic improvement in the management. Contingency theory, it brought rigor in understanding situational nuances, and TQM, it institutionalized quality as a continuous strategic imperative. Learning organization that introduced a cultural and a cognitive dimension in the adoption. So, these developments have deeply influenced the modern management practice, informing concepts like agile management, knowledge management and organizational development. And then the contingency and the modern approaches of the 1970 to 1990s, they mark a pivotal shift toward the flexible, human-centric and a quality-driven management. By rejecting the universal solutions and emphasizing adaptability, continuous learning and a customer focus, they prepared the organizations to thrive in increasingly complex and a competitive environment. Now, these principles continue to underpin the contemporary management thinking and a practice. The next is contemporary theories, that is 1990s to present, that is innovation, inclusion and intelligence. So, since the 1990s, the management theories have evolved rapidly in response to the accelerating pace of the technological advancement, globalization and shifting the workforce values. Now, these era characterized by a strong emphasis on the innovation, human-centric leadership, inclusivity and leveraging the digital intelligence. Contemporary management frameworks embrace the complexity and uncertainty by fostering the agility, empathy and ethical use of the technology. Next is agile management and a design thinking, friends, that is iteration and user-centered innovation. Presently, if you look into, there is a agile management that has emerged primarily from the software development, but has since permeated various industries. It emphasizes flexibility, iterative progress and a collaboration. Design thinking complements though agile by focusing upon the deep user empathy, creative problem solving and rapid prototyping is also important. And if you look into the key features, then iteration and a feedback loop. So, frequent cycles of the development, testing and refinement enable rapid adoption to the change, and the cross-functional teams, if you observe the collaborative, self-organizing teams break down silos to accelerate the innovation, and the customer user focus. So, the solutions are developed with a continuous input from the end users to ensure the relevance and usability. And if you look into the impact of this, then it enables the organization to respond quickly to market changes and customer needs. Also, it fostered a culture of the experimentation and learning from the failure, commonly adopted in the technology firms, startups and increasingly in the traditional sectors seeking digital transformation. And then the last is emotional intelligence, servant leadership and a diversity, equity and inclusion, that is human-centric leadership. So, EI, if you talk about, then Daniel Goleman defined it as the ability to recognize, understand and manage one's own emotions and those of others. EI is critical for the effective leadership, conflict resolution and a team dynamics. Encourages empathy, self-awareness and social skills in the managers. Servant leadership given by the Robert Greenleaf, he said that leadership philosophy emphasizing and prioritizing the growth, well-being and empowerment of the employees and communities. Servant leaders led by the example fosters the trust and emphasize ethical behavior. Contrast with the traditional authorization leadership models by focusing on service rather than power. Diversity, equity and inclusion, that is focusing upon the creating a workplace that values the diverse identities and perspectives, ensuring a fairness and removing the systematic barriers. Recognizing that inclusive cultures enhance the creativity, employee engagement and organizational performance, and DEI has become a central pillar for HR policies nowadays, and again the corporate social responsibility is again one of the very important point that has emerged. Now, because of this, what has happened? These frameworks have reshaped the leadership development and the organization culture. It has promoted the psychology, safety, motivation and a stronger interpersonal relationships. It helps the organization to navigate the complex social dynamics and build the resilient teams, and thus it has lasted to the digital transformation and AI in the management. So, it has led to the rise of the digital technologies, and it is called a fourth industrial revolution. The cloud computing, big data, AI and IoT, it has transformed how organizations operate and compete. Digital transformation involves integrating these technologies to enhance the efficiency, innovation and customer experience. So, because of that, the automation has come, which is streamlining the routine tasks through the AI and the robotics. So, freeing humans from the higher value work. Also, remote and hybrid work, so it enabled by the digital tools, reshaping the work arrangements and leadership challenges. Data driven decision making, so it leveraged the analytics and AI for the predictive insights and the strategic planning. Ethical AI and cyber leadership, so addressing the privacy, bias, transparency and governance in AI deployment. Digital literacy, so essential for the managers and employees to thrive in a technology intensive environment. What is the impact? So, organization become more agile, competitive and a customer centric. Leadership roles expand to include the managing digital ecosystems and ethical consideration, and it raises the new challenges around the workforce, reskilling, cybersecurity and organizational change management. Integration and modern implications, if you look into, then the contemporary management theories blend technological savvy with a strong humanistic ethos, reflecting the complexity of the modern organizations. Agile and decision making fuel and the design thinking fuel rapid innovation cycles. EI, servant leadership and DEI that humanize the workplaces and build the inclusive culture. Digital transformation leverages the cutting edge technology to redefine the productivity and value creation. This approach prepares the organization to face the volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, that is the VUCA environment, while maintaining a focus on a sustainable, ethical and a people-centered growth. So, the contemporary management era has broadened the scope of the management thought beyond the efficiency and the structure to include the innovation, emotional intelligence, inclusivity and a digital intelligence. And these paradigms collectively enable the organization to thrive amid the constant change, balancing the technological advancement with the human values, and they continue to rapidly as new technologies emerge and societal expectations shift. So, after understanding all these fundamentals stepwise, I hope you are clear with the fundamentals, and let me conclude the session over here. So, we have seen that the evolution of the management thought is not merely chronicle listing of the theories, but it is a rich tapestry of the intellectual, social, economical and technological influences that have collectively shaped the way organizations are structured, operated and led. From the rigid formalization to this classical school to the dynamic adaptability of the contemporary theories, each school of thought emerged as a response to the unique challenges and aspirations of its time. Now, this progression underscores the inherently contextual and adaptive nature of the management as a discipline. In essence, we can say that the study of the management thought is not a retrospective exercise, but it is a forward-looking endeavor. By critically examining these theories and the contribution, we have developed a deeper capacity in this session for the reflective management practices and a strategic innovation. So, the challenge for the contemporary and the future manager lies not in choosing the one school of thought over the other, but in weaving together the timeliness principles with the emerging insights to create the responsive, ethical and sustainable organization models. I hope you are clear with all the fundamentals of the evolution of the management thought, and we are very clear that it is indispensable for cultivating the intellectually grounded and socially responsible leaders of the 21st century. I hope you like the session and you are clear with all the fundamentals. Thank you.